the other part I wanted to focus on is that, so we have that big issue was what's happening right now with it, which is the race. I think for the last 10 weeks, we've all had to adjust our way of life over this invisible enemy called COVID-19, who has hamstrung the whole world and kept us all indoors. But as a mental health practitioner, with people who have at first thought, yeah, it's cool, I'm home, I can be with the family, but then after a while, there are those who don't have families, they're staying alone or staying or separated from loved ones. A first week of baking cakes are fine, but then after a while it can get boring. How have you maintained and managed over this time? And then also, and I guess after that, what are some of the advice you might think to give to others who've endured maybe coming out? But we can start off with how have you sort of managed and maintained your sanity over this 10 weeks?
Well, it's been touch and go at times. But what I would say, like, I think there is an element about having compassion for yourselves around that. There are going to be good days and bad days, and there are going to be days when sort of you can do every project under the sun and feel like you're really productive, and other days when you're sat in the fetal position eating ice cream. And it's kind of having that compassion of, actually, we're going through this this massive unknown that hasn't been seen in any of our lifetimes. So the things that I've kind of been doing to keep as sane as possible is always having things to kind of focus on, so little projects. So as you're probably aware about, my little endeavour each week in my team meeting is to dress up in fancy dress and to create a little backdrop. Okay. So sort of focusing on sort of on making a costume each week, for my sanity and also for the sanity of my co-workers. Sort of it'll also be things like keeping as much of a routine as possible. So sort of even on the weekends, I still try and get up at my usual kind of work time. I try and sort of get outside as often as I can, at least once a day, playing a lot of computer games of an evening, and staying as connected as possible with family, and try staying connected by social media or by kind of like web chats and such. And I've even been able to do things like tabletop board gaming with my family, which has been amazing. And so just kind of doing a lot of the normal things that I would do with people, but just virtually.
Do you think having some sort of a routine and structure has been helpful as well?
Yes, oh, definitely. Because I think the whole thing is that there's so much of this situation that is really uncontained, that is really unknown. And sometimes, sort of, it's quite nice to have elements that we are in control of. And actually a really, really simple thing that we can control is our routine, is, sort of what we do on each day, when we get up, the times that we have our meals and things like that. And it's really simple, and it might even sound really arbitrary, but it's just something that kind of gives you something to hold on to. It's something that's quite grounding and kind of keeps you in the here and now.
Now, I noticed at the back, it seems as if it seems very colourful, and like like it was. Is that part of what you do? You change that a lot, or is it something like it's up there and it's going to stay there for the next 5 years or something?
So this one's been up for a good few weeks now, because I did a poison ivy fancy dress. But so I create different backdrops. So last week was kind of like a galactic scene involving a tablecloth and some Star Wars stickers. And I'm not going to give away this week's one, but it does also involve another tablecloth and some paints.
And is that part of that routine that you said you needed to change things out just to give yourself some degree of grounding?
Yeah, and it's that element of having, if I know that every weekend, sort of, or during the process of the week that I've got to kind of figure out an outfit and procure all the elements for an outfit and design my little set, and I only do it for like a day, sort of I only do the fancy dress for a day. Obviously I keep the like settings up and stuff, but it's just that element of, it's something that I can focus on. It's something that gives me purpose, that gives me something to focus on, and to, you know, and gives me a sense of achievement, because actually at the end of the day I can say, well, I've done a really, really good costume, or a really terrible one.
Oh goodness, oh goodness. So as we draw to an end, I think one of the things, I mean, I think there are two things. I think you've given us a great deal of a lot of good tips, but if there are 3 tips that you think for people to pre and post coronavirus, when everyone's out of lockdown, but just if you're advising your young people or their families to, like, this is what you need to, it's a good idea to try and improve your mental health, because there's a lot of stuff about physical health out there, but for us it's about mental health and mental well-being. What are some of the good things that you would sort of suggest?
So I'd really emphasize the idea about compassion for ourselves and for other people, just because we're all, you know, we are all going through our own individual kind of difficulties, our own individual struggles, as well as this, you know, sort of this massive unknown and this invisible enemy. You know, so it's that idea that, you know, there will be times when, you know, we will feel a bit more vulnerable, but it's having a bit, you know, sort of it's about staying connected to the people that we love, to the things that we love, you know, sort of not neglecting, you know, sort of our hobbies. And if there's particular hobbies that we can't do at the moment because of, you know, sort of because of what's happening, how can we most kind of engage, you know, how can we engage with them as best as possible? So, you know, sort of if we're someone who's really, really passionate about a particular sport, then you know, sort of, are there particular things that we can learn? Are there, you know, are there particular videos we can watch, or, you know, or kind of getting involved in promoting clubs and such, but just ways in which we feel connected to our reality, because at the moment it doesn't really feel like, you know, that we are living in a reality, and it's those elements to kind of keep ourselves grounded, as well as, I think, you know, although kind of physical health and mental health are both kind of different elements, I think really, really looking after the physical health. So, you know, following, you know, guidelines about masking up, about kind of keeping the distance from people, things like, you know, eating well, sleeping well. I think one thing that kind of, I remember, there's constant memes going around about that people either come out of lockdown either with an eating addiction, alcoholism, or you know, sort of all come out as, you know, sort of fit and kind of worked out as anything. And I think it is about kind of looking at all those elements in moderation, and, you know, sort of, and not using perhaps like maladaptive things to manage emotions. So if someone's kind of more likely to kind of engage in alcohol or binge eating when they're not feeling so great, you know, sort of, it's about trying to look at other strategies and other things. And there's loads of resources online, you know, sort of, whether it be through NHS or whether, you know, for young people it might be Young Minds, but just, you know, sort of to use those resources and to talk to people when things are difficult.
Okay. So our final part, which is fun for me, is if you're stuck in a lift or an elevator. Yep.
Lift.
Now I say 4 hours because some people, there's some very long movies out there, but let's say 3. Okay. It could be 3.
Okay.
But right. if the engineers come up and says, okay, it's gonna be a while. We've got a movie for you to watch, but while we're putting it on, you can listen to a song, and then while the song finishes, the movie will be ready for you to play. So, what will be your song, and then what will be your movie?
Okay, so the song that I would probably go for, and it's just because it's one that is just really, really, I find it really lovely and really uplifting. It's not like the most complex song ever, but by kind of a group called LCD Sound System, and it's called Oh Baby, and it's just a really really lovely song, and really enjoyable. And film wise, I'd probably have to go to an oldie but goodie for me. Okay, now I'm torn. Okay, no, I'm going to go for the highbrow one. And so, like, again, a highbrow one, so kind of to make me seem sophisticated.
Okay, yeah.
But so as far as kind of artistically wise, I am a really, really big Charlie Chaplin fan.
Okay.
So I would probably go for The Great Dictator, just because it's a really wonderful film. Like, although yes, he, you know, sort of within his personal life he had a lot of questionable elements, but he was, as far as kind of, progressively speaking, he was leaps and bounds ahead of so many people, and it's just such an uplifting fit. Like, it's a real, like, obviously he was like the master of comedy, particularly physical comedy, but there's a speech that he does in the end that is so uplifting that it just kind of gives you a warm feeling inside.
But was it not in like black and white, and he was talking and the words are later on, like, yeah. Or was it so when he said he gives a speech, I'm like, then the words come up, he says this. No. So
it wasn't in like the silent. It wasn't kind of one of the silent movies. No, okay, it was his, I believe it was his first talkie.
Okay.
And it was done at quite an interesting time, because it was kind of based around a sort of a dictator who was very much like sort of a certain historic figure, and it was done sort of around kind of World War II time. Okay. So it was very, very like very close to the mark, but it was I highly recommend it. It's amazing.
I've never watched or heard about it, but I think one of the reasons why I like to ask these questions, because it then helps me expand my film library. So I'll look out for Charlie Chaplin's Great Dictator.
Well, if we ever get back to face-to-face uni, I'll bring in my copy. You can borrow it.
Okay. Is it on Betamax or
DVD, VHS, obviously? No, DVD.
DVD. Okay. Well, so it's been great having this conversation. It's been great having you a guest on our show. Really covering a range of things, which my hope is that kids, young people, families, not just here in the UK but across the world, will see things and hear things of what you've said today that would inspire and and I'm glad you dressed up for the occasion. It's always, yeah.
I'm going to sleep after this.
Okay, yeah. No, I'll be editing.
Thank you so much for having me, though, and it's always lovely kind of having our conversations. So. Yeah. Really fantastic thing to do.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Sarah, and we'll be catching up.
You take care.
Okay.